right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Passive Cash Flow Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Fragnito. And by the way, my friends, if you're enjoying our content here, please like and subscribe and share this with a friend who you think might get some value out of the Passive Cash Flow Podcast. But we have an exciting guest today. We have Grant Shipman with Co-Living here. It's a very interesting company called Livingsmith. And I want to have Grant on the show because he does something that I'm really not familiar with, but can multiply the returns on your real estate. And you don't have to buy a big apartment building. You can do it with a single family home, which are just all over the place. So how are we doing today, Grant?
Well, Aaron, it's like you have maintained this like high quality show, right? With great people on here. So I'm real honored to be on here because this topic, it's something like any kind of, real grassroots change. It's like it's happening, it's all over. And then, people don't even know about it, right? Until it's everywhere. So it's great to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
No, absolutely, Grant. I appreciate that compliment there. Thank you. Yes, this is episode, I think we're over 165 at this point. I think we're around 170. I lose track of these things. But so yes, been doing the podcast for about 4 years. And I like to have very interesting guests on that are doing interesting things, but not just real syndicators buying multifamily properties. There's too many of those out there anyway. So I like what you're doing here. This is very interesting, and I'll explain it briefly, and then you correct me and explain how it's done. So you're essentially buying single family homes with a fair amount of bedroom bath count, 4 beds, 3 baths, something like that, which are just very prevalent in New Jersey here. It's pretty much what we do in North Jersey. And you are leasing them out per room, essentially with long-term leases, and you're getting a much higher return on investment than you were if you were to lease that to just one family. So you're kind of almost creating like a little tiny apartment building right there in itself. And you're multiplying your money. Is this correct?
Yeah, it's almost spot on. Just a few numbers. Is a typical house that I'll have is 7 to 11 bedrooms. And this is something that always shocks people. Like they're like, "What?" And but to have an example of this is um, when, like, for my wife and I have 2 children. So we're in a 5-bedroom house. We've got our second property down in El Paso, but we don't just have a living room. We have a kids' play area, right? So they can trash that play area and have their toys all over the place. And then there's a fireplace room, right? So there's all these extra rooms that when there is a family with children, you want to have all these other common areas. But when you have responsible adults, no children, basically a typical 5-bedroom house, 3 bathrooms, turns into a 7-bedroom, super easy. While you keep your main living room, vaulted ceiling, looks awesome, but to say, and then people will come, if Aaron, if you were driving by one of these houses, they're all over, right? It's usually a corner lot because you want to have plenty of parking. They're all over the place. They're 2,500 to maybe 3,900 square foot. 2,500 is great with 7 people. If you drove by, the only thing that you might notice is the yard looks better than the rest of the neighborhood, because when you have 7 people, there's always 1 or 2 people who want to fight over who gets to take care of the yard the best, right? And then we always keep, there's no more than 3 bedrooms to 1 bathroom. And yeah, this is, people stay there 2+ years. These are people who can afford to live by themselves, but they would like to live with others. There's a lot of people who, they're widowed, or they're putting off marriage, or they got divorced, something like that. And it's actually a very cool thing, because say, for example, a house that would make 2,900 for a normal, renting it out on one lease, I'm going to be making $5,600 to $6,300 a month. But on the flip side, a renter is going to be getting a beautiful whole house, front and backyard, this whole neighborhood experience, and they're only paying for the price of a room. And they don't have to sign a lease with strangers. The lease is just on their room. I mean, it's just something where both sides of the equation super win. And then maybe the one other thing to add in that that is so great is responsible adults are usually not at home. They're at their job, they're at the gym, they're out with friends. So if you're driving through the neighborhood and you notice this house with a nicer yard, and you're like, oh, okay, this is one of Grant's rental properties. If you came in, you'd be like, man, this house is so quiet and so nice.
Mm.
And that's what we oftentimes when I talk with people who are just getting into it, they don't really realize is when you have a house with, say, 5 or 6 people in it, people don't enjoy that as much because renters actually want to see each other, right? If you got 7 people, then you have a good chance that at least one other person in the house has your shared schedule.
Hmm.
But once you're down to 4 people, it's very, I mean, it's almost like you're living in a house by yourself because these everybody has so many different schedules and people spend most of their time out of their house, compared to parents like me. We spend a lot of time in our house because it takes lots of work to get the kids out of the house. So the neat thing about that though is risk profile wise for the owner, the investor, and all my properties are syndicated, but the risk profile is much lower because because you have multiple responsible adults. If there's one bad egg, the other ones are going to hold them in check. They're going to get that person kicked out. And so it's just something where it's like, holy cow, I make more money for less money with a lower risk profile, and I have all these renters that are super happy. And when one moves out, I'm still getting 6+ checks on that property.
At People's Capital Group, we help you invest in real estate. Build your wealth by owning professionally managed apartment buildings in the northern New Jersey market. We want to show you how owning real estate is attainable, even for the busy professionals that don't have the time or experience investing in real estate. Now, we only work with select people who are serious about building wealth. So find out if you qualify at peoplescapitalgroup.com. Right. Okay, so that's interesting. So now, so you're kind of finding a unique person that doesn't mind living with other people, essentially, or really is looking for that company. I do know people that don't like living alone. Actually, I'm kind of one of them, but it depends on the day, I suppose.
Right.
Um, you must really have to vet your tenants because I'm just thinking to myself, boy, you get a couple bad apples in there, they're going to ruin the whole
Mm,
bunch. And then you have them on a year-long lease, right? Everyone's on an individual year-long lease. So how, you get someone in there who doesn't want to move their car, to let the other guy
mm,
out, or throw, his girlfriend lives there and
mm,
now all the time, and they make a mess. Like, you're sharing bathrooms, you're sharing kitchens. Like, I was in college, we would fight over that stuff all the time. No
mm,
one did the dishes. The place was a mess. The bathroom was disgusting. And there were always people that like didn't want to party, but then we'd throw a party, and then you'd have your significant other over, and like they'd be hanging out now they just like live there
mm.
half the time, but they're on a lease, and then they'd fight with the other guy's girlfriend, and then man, that was college, that's what it happens. So, like, how do you avoid all this?
Aaron, I'm really glad you asked that because it really, I mean, I would guess at least 90% of people listening or in this kind of discussion, this is what they think. And here's what is so I would say there's a couple things in play, but a big one is these houses that like co-living property, and which is really a rental strategy, right? You could take that same house and do it on Airbnb. You could take that same house and put it on one lease. You could take that same house and do midterm. But a co-living rental strategy for a long time has not had a co-living property management system. And so these people are living in co-living atmospheres, but the property management system is having a heck of a time, right? It's you got pissed off tenants, you got high turnover, you got a dirty property, you got property damage. People aren't taking the kind of that pride of ownership, even as a renter in the property. You know, these kind of things are happening. And so what I had kind of this beautiful accident was when I was getting involved in like, hey, I want to do some investing, all of that stuff. I found out that the number one demand right now for rental, a rental lease, like a residential lease, is the one person lease. And if I just camp on this for a moment because it's such a big deal, is a lot of things get blamed for the housing shortage. But what the people who talk about it, particularly us real estate investors, they don't realize that in 2003, for the first time ever, the most common lease was the one-person lease. So that meant, you know, the current inventory, you know, of rental properties. So a lease has two people on it, has three people on it, might have four or five. Now for that same property has one person on it. So it's not that, you know, in 2000, you know, 7, 8, 9, you know, building, you know, reduced by 60% of single family houses, right? It's that the way we are living became different. And and then what happened then around 2010, 11, when the share economy was happening, so Airbnb, Ubers, all of this stuff, people
Mhm.
didn't know it, but this other thing was happening, co-living. And so people wanted to live with others.
Hmm.
Um, and so you have these like what was the first? I think Ollie started up. It was a $50 million startup in 2011.
Mhm.
We've had over, there was Starsty a couple years later. Common is a $112 million co-living startup. But anyway, before I get too wordy, Aaron, because I just get so passionate about this because it's just such a cool thing that's happening, and a lot of people, you know, you're not aware of it until you are. Is
Mhm.
this demand is so big
Hmm.
that that my property managers can be very picky. The other one is I lived for 20 years in the intentional living community, so more like the hippies, the housing co-ops,
Hmm.
these places that they weren't transitional housing. It's just more on the outside of society, these people who wanted to live with others. So I just took their stuff when I found out, man, this major demand, this like residential revolution is happening. The number one demand for lease, co-living fits that. I can
Mhm.
get a single family house way cheaper. It's asset managing that asset's way easier. There's one HVAC system, one kitchen sink, right? Um, the insurance is real helpful, but I just copied everything that the intentional living community did, and I translated into a property management system. So um, as an example, like our houses are super clean. We don't have to overly vet people because how we set it up is it just sets people up for success. If a bad apple sneaks in, the other renters remove that person, and um, and so much so that one of my full-time property managers can manage 140 leases, no problem. I mean, it's sorry to again, like I get just so excited about it because most people picture what you're saying. There's this college or some kind of transitional housing, right? Student housing,
Right.
senior housing, you
Right.
know, poor housing. And it's like, ooh, like my real estate mentor, when I first started saying this to him, I'm like, hey, guess what? Guess what? I can do this rent by the room thing. He's like, don't do it, Grant. Don't do it. He goes, you think you're going to make tons of money, but by the end of the month your profits all disappeared and you got big headaches and you're pissed, right? But which is true with transitional housing, but with what's happening now with co-living and what I learned from the intentional living community, it's just a bunch of people like me and you. Me and my wife lived in these houses. People didn't know we owned them. We were kind of incognito, but we lived in them until 4 years ago when we started having kids because it's such an enjoyable environment.
Huh. That's interesting. Um, okay, so I know in New Jersey you can only have one
Mm,
lease per single family home. So you have to
mm,
find states that allow this type of leasing per zoning? Is it state by state or is it municipality by municipality? How does that work?
Yeah, that's so it's it can be both. So it's one thing that's nice about zoning. So what you're bringing up, this is so important. There are people in the co-living world that do teach to not worry about zoning. Um, they have some different business tricks that they try to talk investors into, called like membership agreements. Hey, don't have a lease, have a membership agreement, then you don't have to pay attention to zoning. Um, but to say what you're bringing, what's that?
Or like subleasing, maybe you could get away with that, I guess. I don't know. You could have like a
Yeah, it's
master lease and then sublease out to other people. Is that possibly one way around it, I guess?
I mean, people say it's a way around it, but at the end of the day, what these uniform development codes, unified development codes,
Mhm.
they typically say is there's going to be something like in a single um in a single living unit, so an apartment, a house, there's going to be no more, there's either going to be everybody's related by, law or blood,
Mhm.
or no more than three unrelated adults, no more than four unrelated adults.
Right.
Some places have, like Spokane, no more than 12 unrelated adults.
Mhm.
But there's always, almost always, like 99% is there's some kind of limit on the unrelated adults that can be in a property. And it
Mhm.
doesn't matter about, are they all on one lease? Are they not? And so my big encouragement is with co-living, it is so easy to make money. It's so easy to win on this.
Mhm.
Just Google the code enforcement's number in that jurisdiction, whether it's city, county, state, and just ask them. Just say, hey, this is what I'm looking at doing.
Mhm.
What are the rules? And to say though is, like effective July 1st, the whole state of Colorado banned any limitation on co-living. So it doesn't matter. Like say,
Mhm.
for instance, um, Loveland, Colorado used to have a no more than four unrelated people. Now that doesn't matter. Statewide, they just banned it.
Okay.
Um, where where other places, say like Houston, will have, there's not a limitation on that, except for like health and safety, and health and safety is always easy to meet. And yeah, like you said, is it could be county, it could be whatever's in charge of you. I mean, HOAs, a similar thing.
Right. Right.
But almost everywhere, this can be done, in zoning that works well. It's just a matter of doing an extra step of due diligence, before you invest.
At People's Capital Group, we help you invest in real estate. Build your wealth by owning professionally managed apartment buildings in the northern New Jersey market. We want to show you how owning real estate is attainable, even for the busy professionals that don't have the time or experience investing in real estate. Now, we only work with select people who are serious about building wealth, so find out if you qualify at peoplescapitalgroup.com. Yeah, yeah. And okay, so you want to do your due diligence on the zoning and understand the consequences there, or the limitations there. Um, and then as far as the bedrooms, so you also need to make sure these individuals are in actual bedrooms, right? It can't be like a room without a window, right? There's a fire escape. It can't be so an office or like a little. You can't put them in the garage, or things like that, right? So you were actually buying properties with like 7 to 11 legal bedrooms. Is that correct?
So yeah, and legal. So yes, it is. To though make it a little more specific, is say, like the house that I'm in. I mentioned that the kids have a play area.
Hmm.
So if there was, like we just did this, in a house that we're onboarding, is that play area, um, uh, an interior door is added to that. So the playroom now just has a door, and it looks like it was built that way. So it's nice. That that playroom, which now I'm going to use as a bedroom,
Hmm.
it has a window, so it is legal to rent to somebody. It doesn't have a closet, so it wouldn't be considered, like a conforming bedroom,
Mm.
as far as the MLS goes. But as far as legally, somebody can rent that and stay there, and so there's an egress window in it. So yeah, so following the law is always a great thing to do,
Mhm.
and especially when the money is so great and everybody wins so well, and if you have some rooms that they're not legal bedrooms, then
Mhm.
maybe somebody in the house wants to rent it as their office, right? Or you have it as another little sitting area. I've had houses use it as like, hey, we've got kind of this weight room, computer room. And again, these houses are nice. The renters keep them clean. This is not the like, kind of adult fraternity house, for lack of a
Yeah.
better term. Yeah.
Yeah. That's like all I can think about as you're explaining this. I'm having flashbacks to college and like, man, I lived in houses in college where you could not walk around without your shoes on. It was
Yeah.
disgusting. I remember, and I was
Disgusting.
part of the problem. I mean, I had a house in college where I kept my dirt bikes in the dining room because we didn't have a garage,
Right?
and it was awesome.
Yeah.
You have like parties, and the girls would sit on the dirt bikes. Man, it was those are the days.
Well, and that's the thing when people call up, like, because I used to, when was it? So I stopped managing my properties in 2018. I've owned a property management company since then.
Wow.
And if anybody listening, like if you were ever like getting curious about this, if anybody is like, oh, I want to do a co-living property,
Mhm.
it's so important that like I didn't plan on starting my own co-living property management company. There's just not companies that know how to do this. They
Mhm.
might say they do, but what they're doing is what you're talking about. They're doing college housing, right? Like
Right.
it is, they know that these people are in an irresponsible time of life. They're home a lot. They haven't like, there's just a certain maturity level. So like in your college years, like even if you're a mature college student and you're responsible for a college age student, that's nothing like, you know, 30s, 40s, that kind of thing. And so if somebody is looking at getting into this, what I always emphasize is, hey, there's co-living, which is very different from transitional housing. Hey, I'm only going to be here for one semester or 4 years while I'm in school, or like I have some sober living houses. Those are more of a mission for me. They're not, those aren't co-living houses. People are there because they want the support so they can re-enter mainstream society.
Right.
College students are in college housing because mainstream society doesn't want them in their housing. Um, so where co-living is very much mainstream housing for mainstream people. It's
Mhm.
just something that's new and different. And I think it just fits where we are at with like, how the nuclear family's going, how often people move. It's that like I want to be on my own. But I mean, the idea of having to live in a 1, 2, or 3 bedroom apartment by yourself because you're, a responsible, adult that doesn't have, you don't want to sign leases with friends, right? Like that just, it didn't fit for people. So now we have this huge demand for, and renters don't even know the word co-living. My first company, we call it community living houses because it was
All
just, we
right.
had to come up with a term.
Yeah. 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 Interesting. Okay. And so, but you don't do it in Jersey, right? So what states do you do this in?
So right now we're in Texas, in Florida, in Colorado.
Mhm.
Um and I would be man, I'd have to look up Jersey on that because that'd be interesting. I'd not heard of the whole one lease, per residential unit.
Yeah.
Because I'd have to check
Sure.
into it, but yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like 99% sure, unless there's been some new law. Thinking about it though, it does make like there's a housing shortage in Jersey. We don't have enough space. Housing prices are too high. Why don't these silly politicians allow you to have more than one lease per home? Because we have huge homes here. Like they're,
Mhm.
4, 6, 7 bedrooms, right? And then you have families living there and maybe not always utilizing it, or couples or older couples, people, empty
Mhm.
nesters, and they're in like a 5 bedroom home. It would really, I think, lower rental prices a little bit, create more inventory, and help the housing shortage if they did allow single family homes to have multiple leases here. But I am like 99% sure that's not allowed unless the law has recently changed. I'm not aware of.
I'm
Here in
I'm
Jersey.
actually I've got this. It used to be a little bit of work. Like I said, you have to like
Mhm.
Google the, the county or the city, whatever has jurisdiction over that
Mhm.
area that I'm looking at. And now because of AI, it makes it so much easier because really these rules, although they're important to check, I mean, I call up city planners and they might not even know.
Yeah. Sure.
Um, and so uh, what you're saying though is actually it's this legislation trend. There is, I mean, pretty much everywhere there's legislation that's saying, hey, there's a housing shortage. We need to increase housing density.
Right.
Um, and so the cool thing about co-living, whether people use that term or not, is it takes current inventory and it increases the density of it, which is
Hmm.
awesome. I mean,
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know if there's anybody besides co-living investors that are offering right now solutions to the housing crisis, right? Everything else is we're going to build, we're going to develop, we're going to
Yeah.
whatever. And so these trends, I mean, it's hard to stay on top of all the laws like the cities that just say, okay, now we're going to remove this old no more than three unrelated adults. I think the best I can come up with is these rules got put in place back in the 60s or 70s, more so to limit, like as a way to either kind of poke at like homosexual relationships or
Mhm. Mhm.
anything that's not the like, you know, husband, wife,
Yeah.
two or three kids.
Yeah.
But more the big deal is these ordinances that were in place because they had a hard time enforcing nuisance rules, right? Like noise or these kind of things. So they put in these rules. So
Yeah.
it's like if there's a problem, they enforce it. And the nice thing is because of exactly what you brought up, these rules are changing all over the place, which is
Right.
really great news for the co-living investor because you're like, hey, woo.
Yeah, yeah. I also think there's a not in my backyard type of thing going on in Jersey too. Like, you think
Yes.
about, 12 adults living in a house and you're like, that's a drug house. That's, they're just doing lots of drugs in there. And I don't want that in my nice New Jersey northern neighborhood, here. So, I think but obviously
Mhm.
what you're saying, these are working professionals. These are not people selling and doing drugs. Hopefully not, right?
Like,
Then your leasing process didn't work out, but no. So it sounds like a good model there. I mean, we do the same thing. Obviously, we vet our tenants. We try to get good quality tenants with a strong income, good credit score, good landlord references that live an organized life, and ideally are not selling drugs, right? So that's you looking for, and it makes sense. But I guess maybe the whole mindset of co-living has to be transitioned to, hey, it can be just hardworking individuals that just don't want to pay for a whole apartment, and also don't want to go home to an empty apartment at the end of the night and at the end of the day. I get that as well, being single. In fact, I'm starting to think as a single man, maybe I should look into these co-living situations. Probably a great way to find a
it,
wife at the end of the day, right? At People's Capital Group, we help you invest in real estate. Build your wealth by owning professionally managed apartment buildings in the northern New Jersey market. We want to show you how owning real estate is attainable, even for the busy professionals that don't have the time or experience investing in real estate. Now, we only work with select people who are serious about building wealth, so find out if you qualify at peoplescapitalgroup.com.
what is incredible about it is actually it is so there's this term, I call it household. Maybe it has a better term out there, but there's this it's like the social need that like everybody has, but
Mhm.
we've almost all forgotten about. Like
Mhm.
household doesn't mean these are your best buddies, right? Like family, like if you think of a really healthy traditional family, right?
Yeah.
You might not be hanging out with your brother or this or that or all that stuff, but there's this shared respect and baseline mutual appreciation.
Hmm.
There is incredible wealth in that group. Not talking about finances, but they save so much money, right? Because they're sharing a house. If somebody's car breaks down, which it has to happen sometime,
Sure.
like they're not having to pay, for an Uber or a rental car. Like there's this wealth in having the people who you live with,
Yeah.
not like be great people. That's that, when I was living in the houses, it's like each of us did 20 minutes of chores a week, right? When you
Hmm.
have 7 people doing 20 minutes of chores a week, that
Hmm.
house is clean and awesome,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Mhm.
and as far as everybody, even people who really like to be loud and have fun, at the bars or parties, like people who these houses attract, they want their home to be someplace that's peaceful and relaxed, right? So
Right.
if you're gonna drink, if you want to go have a great time, they do that outside the house, right? And they want
Mhm.
to come back home to a peaceful, responsible house.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it is, I mean, there's a reason why I lived in the houses for over 24 years like this,
Uh,
because I
uh,
loved it. It was even when I was like financially free. Like the next thing we bought was a massive house that overlooks Rocky Mountain National Park. Right. This isn't this is about what is enjoyable for life rather than like, oh crap, I can't afford to live by myself, so I have to live with these jerks.
yeah.
That kind
Yeah.
of thing.
I hear you. All right, Grant. Very interesting, man. But very eye-opening. I love what you do. I'm definitely going to learn more about it. With all the real estate we own. I mean, but I don't. Yeah, I think Jersey has those limitations. But we'll see. Maybe we'll look into PA. We're not too far from there either. But how could people get in touch with you and learn more about what you do?
Yeah. Well, so something that I put together that because this is so different, and either people you can either do it and do it the right way and make a lot of money. Like right now, a lot of people aren't buying more properties as much, but this is a way to increase the revenue and definitely boost the profits of current properties in your portfolio. But to say what I did, because I want to encourage people to get into this, but I want to encourage them to do it in a way that they win, not like they accidentally end up with a transitional housing, because that's important for society, but that's not where the money's at right now. It takes a lot more work. And so, but to say is I put together um, a web page. Let me see here, real specific. So let me see. So livingsmithpro.com PCF for passive cash flow. And this is it's not available to others, but anybody listening, if they go to that, I do a 5-day free training if that fits it. I also have on there, our book that's normally like 27, 28 bucks on Amazon. You can download it, or even just schedule a question answer session with me or some of the teaching staff with Livingsmith, because it is really fantastic. And it's new, it's different. So to anything that we can do to help, but that's livingsmithpro.com/PCF. And they'll get, anybody can check out those things. And of course, all our social media is there as well.
Mhm, mhm. Awesome. Awesome. Very exciting. All right, great, Grant. Well, I'll definitely check that out myself. It's been very eye-opening having you on the show here once again. I love learning about new investment strategies and new ways to make passive income in real estate and build your wealth. And then, of course, you have the wealth of the property itself. Especially in North Jersey,
Right.
you buy a nice single-family home in a nice neighborhood. Over time, that really that grows in value. So, very interesting stuff there. All right, excellent. To our listeners, hopefully you've really learned a lot here from Grant, and maybe check out his website there and learn more about what he's doing. Might be fit for your investment goals there. And on our end, of course, we're always buying apartment buildings here in northern New Jersey with our in-house management company. We're repositioning them and producing passive
Mm,
returns for our investors and tax benefits along the way, and a large liquidity events on those sales and refinances, and helping people preserve and build their wealth in northern New Jersey. Hopefully, you've been enjoying our passive cash flow podcast here. We're up well over 160 episodes now, so just trying to get some consistent content out to our listeners with interesting guests like Grant here today. And if you are enjoying it, then like it and share it with a friend or a colleague that you think would gain value from these episodes. And be sure to subscribe there on YouTube or those major platforms we're on as well. But thanks a lot, Grant, for coming on, my friend. You have a good day.
Hey, thanks so much, Aaron. This is great. Keep up the great work with this podcast. It's awesome.
Thank you, buddy.